Maya Chin thought she had finally found a place where Derek wouldn't look for her. A rundown diner in the warehouse district where the coffee was bitter and the clientele minded their own business. She was wrong. At 24, she was counting down the days with $4,500 saved toward the $7,000 she needed to disappear completely, to take her sick brother somewhere Derek could never find them. But on this cold Tuesday evening, her carefully constructed invisibility shattered the moment her abusive ex-boyfriend walked through the glass doors of Murphy's Diner. Maya balanced 3 plates on her left arm while refilling coffee with her right hand, her movements efficient despite the exhaustion that had settled into her bones over the past 8 months. She was a nursing student at City Community College, working double shifts at the diner to pay for both her brother's medical bills and her own escape fund. Her natural black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she'd gotten skilled at applying concealer to hide the faint yellow bruises along her jawline that were finally fading. The long sleeves of her uniform covered the finger-shaped marks on her wrists that Derek had left 3 weeks ago during their last encounter. She was practical, focused, and knew the exact value of every dollar she earned. Her tips went into a coffee can hidden behind her textbooks. Her hourly wage covered rent for the tiny studio apartment she shared with her 15-year-old brother Marcus, who was battling a rare kidney condition that required expensive treatments. Maya's dream was simple: get Marcus healthy, finish nursing school, and build a life somewhere Derek could never hurt either of them again. The dinner rush was winding down when the man in the expensive suit took the corner booth. Maya noticed him immediately because everything about him screamed money and power in a place where most customers counted quarters for coffee. He was Korean, late 30s with sharp, almost sculptured features and dark hair swept back from his forehead. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that cost more than Maya made in 6 months. When he moved, it was with controlled precision, like every gesture had been calculated for maximum efficiency. Jin Hyunwoo owned half the commercial real estate in the warehouse district, along with several shipping companies and import businesses that served as fronts for his actual occupation. He was the head of the Seoul Tigers, a Korean organized crime family that controlled territory from the docks to downtown. Tonight, he was here for a business meeting that had been postponed, so he decided to wait and observe his surroundings. He always noticed details that others missed. It was how he'd stayed alive and in power for the past decade. "What can I get you?" Maya asked, approaching his table with her notepad ready. Her voice was steady, professional, but Jin's trained eye caught the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like someone expecting trouble. "Coffee, black," he said. His English was perfect, with only the faintest trace of an accent. Something about this waitress intrigued him. She moved with quiet competence, but there was a wariness in her dark eyes that spoke of someone who had learned not to trust easily. Maya poured his coffee and was turning away when the bell above the door chimed. She froze, her entire body going rigid as Derek Matthews walked in with his usual swagger. He was 28, broad-shouldered with the kind of smile that had initially charmed Maya before she learned what lay beneath it. Tonight, his presence filled the nearly empty diner with an undercurrent of menace that made Maya's carefully maintained composure crack. Jean watched the transformation with sharp interest. The confident waitress had vanished, replaced by a woman who looked like a deer caught in headlights. Her breathing had changed, becoming shallow and quick, her hand trembling slightly as she set down the coffee pot. Most telling of all, she unconsciously stepped back toward the wall, putting distance between herself and the newcomer. Derek spotted Maya immediately, and his grin widened. Well, look what I found," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "My girl Maya, playing dress-up as a working woman." He slid into a booth near the front, positioning himself between Maya and the exit. "Been looking all over for you, sweetheart." "I'm working, Derek," Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please just order something or leave." "That's no way to talk to someone who cares about you," Derek replied, his tone deceptively casual. "We need to have a conversation about your little disappearing act. About Marcus and those medical bills you've been struggling with. About how I can make all your problems go away if you just come home where you belong." Jin's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around his coffee cup. He'd heard this dynamic before, recognized the subtle threats wrapped in concern, the way the man controlled the conversation while making himself sound reasonable. It was the same pattern his sister Yuna had described in her last phone call, 5 years ago, before her boyfriend had killed her and left Jean to find her body 3 days later. Maya's face had gone pale, and she was gripping her order pad so tightly her knuckles were white. "I told you, we're over, Derek. I'm not coming back. You need to leave me alone." Derek's expression darkened, and his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You think you can just walk away from me? From us? You think some part-time job and community college classes make you independent?" He leaned forward. "You owe me, Maya. For all the times I took care of you, for all the chances I gave you. And your brother owes me too, for all those times I helped with his medical expenses." The threat was clear, and Maya's resolve visibly crumbled. Her eyes darted toward the exit, but Derek was blocking her path. Jean watched her calculate her options and realized she had none. It was a look he'd seen in too many eyes, the moment when someone recognized their powerlessness. Derek stood up, tossing a $5 bill on the table. "I'll be waiting in the parking lot when your shift ends. Maya, we're going to settle this tonight, one way or another. Don't make me come looking for you again. It won't go well for Marcus if I have to track you down." As Derek left, Maya sagged against the counter, her professional composure finally breaking. She was shaking now, and Jean could see her fighting back tears. He'd made his decision the moment he witnessed Derek's veiled threats. Some lines, once crossed, demanded a response. Jean stood and walked to the counter, pulling out his wallet. He left a $50 bill beside his barely touched coffee. The waitress with the haunted eyes looked up at him in surprise. "What time does your shift end?" he asked quietly. 11, Maya whispered, glancing nervously toward the parking lot where Derek's pickup truck was visible under the streetlight. Jean nodded once and walked toward the exit. As he passed Maya, he spoke without stopping. "Stay inside until you see his truck leave. Then wait 5 more minutes." By the time Maya's shift ended, Derek's truck was gone, and a sleek black sedan had taken its place. Maya's hands shook as she untied her apron at 10:55, dreading the walk to the parking lot where Derek would be waiting. She'd spent the last hour hoping he might give up and leave, but his pickup truck remained under the streetlight like a predator lying in wait. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she gathered her purse and jacket, knowing she had no choice but to face whatever he had planned. The night air was cold and sharp when she pushed through the diner's back door. Derek wasn't alone. 2 men she didn't recognize flanked him as he leaned against his truck, smoking a cigarette. Maya's blood turned to ice. Derek bringing backup meant this wasn't going to be a conversation. "There she is," Derek called out, his voice carrying across the nearly empty parking lot. "My runaway girlfriend finally ready to come home." He flicked his cigarette aside and straightened up. "Maya, meet Tommy and Rick. They've been helping me look for you." The 2 men were bigger than Derek, with the kind of build that suggested they settled disputes with violence. Maya's throat closed up as she realized how completely trapped she was. The parking lot backed up to a chain-link fence. Her car was parked between Derek's truck and a dumpster. There was nowhere to run. "Derek, please," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "I just want to go home to check on Marcus. He's been sick and needs his medication." Derek's expression hardened. "Marcus is exactly why we need to talk. See, those medical bills you've been struggling with? They're about to get a lot worse. His kidney condition is getting serious, and the insurance company is starting to ask questions about coverage." He moved closer, his friends flanking him. "But I know people who can make those problems disappear. All you have to do is stop playing hard to get." Maya backed up until she hit the brick wall of the diner. This was worse than she'd imagined. Derek wasn't just threatening her anymore. He was using Marcus's illness as leverage, holding her brother's life over her head like a weapon. "I can't, Derek. You hurt me. You scared me. I can't go back to that." Derek's face twisted with anger, and he grabbed her wrist hard enough to make her gasp. "You can't? You don't get to make that choice anymore, Maya. You belong to me. Your brother belongs to me. And if you think running away to some dive diner is going to change that, you're stupider than I thought." One of Derek's friends, Tommy, stepped closer. "She's prettier than you said, Derek. Maybe we should give her some time to think about it. Help her understand how serious this situation is." The threat was unmistakable, and Maya's vision started to tunnel with panic. This wasn't just about Derek wanting her back. This was about control, about breaking her down until she had no choice but to submit completely. That's when the black sedan's door opened. Jin Hyunwoo stepped out of his car with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command. He didn't hurry, didn't raise his voice, didn't even look particularly concerned. He simply walked across the parking lot with his hands in the pockets of his expensive coat, his presence transforming the entire dynamic. "Gentlemen," Jin said quietly, his voice carrying despite its low volume. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Derek turned, irritated by the interruption. "This is private business, buddy. Keep walking." Jin stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to speak normally, but far enough to assess the situation completely. He looked directly at Derek with dark, calculating eyes. "I don't think you understand who you're talking to. This is my territory. These are my streets. And that woman works in my building." The claim was a stretch, but Derek didn't know that. What he did know was that everything about the stranger screamed danger. The expensive suit, the controlled stillness, the way he spoke without any trace of fear despite being outnumbered 3-1. Tommy stepped forward, trying to intimidate through size. "Look, Korean, this doesn't concern you. Walk away before you get hurt." Jin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. The air itself seemed to grow heavier. "My name is Jin Hyunwoo. I own the warehouses 6 blocks in every direction. I employ 300 people in this district. And if you don't release that woman immediately, you're going to discover why people in this neighborhood treat me with respect." Derek's grip on Maya's wrist loosened slightly. He'd heard of Jin Hyunwoo. Everyone in the area had heard rumors about the Korean businessman who ran legitimate operations during the day and something much darker after hours. "This is between me and my girlfriend," Derek said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. "Your ex-girlfriend," Jin corrected. "And as of right now, she's under my protection. You have 30 seconds to leave this parking lot. If I see any of you near this building again, if I hear you've contacted her, if I even suspect you've thought about her, you'll disappear. Permanently." Maya had stopped breathing. The quiet menace in Jin's voice was more terrifying than Derek's loud threats. This was a man who didn't make empty promises. Derek released Maya's wrist completely, his survival instincts finally overriding his anger. "Come on, guys. This isn't worth it. The psycho can have her." The 3 men retreated to Derek's truck, but Derek couldn't resist one final threat. "This isn't over, Maya. You think he's going to protect you forever? Men like that don't care about women like you. When he gets bored, you'll come crawling back." Derek's truck roared to life and squealed out of the parking lot, leaving Maya and Jin alone under the harsh streetlight. Maya was shaking uncontrollably now, the adrenaline and terror finally catching up with her. Jin approached slowly, his movements careful and non-threatening. "Are you injured?" he asked, examining her wrist where Derek's fingers had left red marks. "I'm fine," Maya lied, but her voice was shaking as badly as her hands. "No, you're not," Jin said simply. "That man has been hurting you for a long time. The way you flinched when he touched you, the fear in your eyes, the way you try to make yourself invisible. How long has this been going on?" Maya's defenses crumbled under his precise observations. She wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine for months. 8 months, she whispered. "I left him 8 months ago, but he keeps finding me. He won't let me go." Jin nodded, as if this confirmed what he'd already suspected. "Your brother, Marcus." Derek mentioned medical bills. "What's wrong with him?" Maya found herself answering honestly for the first time in months. "Kidney disease. He needs dialysis 3 times a week and he's on the transplant list, but the treatments are expensive and insurance doesn't cover everything. I've been working double shifts trying to save enough for his care and to get us both away from Derek, but it's never enough." Jin reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. It was thick, expensive paper with simple black lettering. His name, a phone number, nothing else. "When you're ready to be safe, call me," he said, pressing the card into her trembling hand. "I can provide protection and resources that Derek can't touch. Complete safety for both you and your brother, along with the best medical care available." Maya stared at the card. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Jin's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Let's just say I have experience with men who hurt women. And I have resources to make sure they stop permanently." The way he said permanently sent a chill down Maya's spine. This man wasn't talking about restraining orders or police reports. He was offering something much more final. Maya clutched the card. "What would you want in exchange?" We'll discuss terms when you call, Jean said. For now, just know that you have options. Real options. Maya watched Jean drive away in his black sedan, her mind reeling from everything that had happened. She looked down at the business card in her hand, feeling its weight like a lifeline and a trap all at once. The next morning, Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert. A pickup truck had exploded in a gas station parking lot across town. The owner, Derek Matthews, had escaped without injury when the vehicle caught fire due to what investigators were calling a gas leak accident. The truck was completely destroyed. Maya stared at the news report, her hands trembling as she realized Derek's truck was gone and Jean Hyenwa's business card was still in her purse. The message was clear. Jean had the power to make threats disappear, and he was willing to use it for her protection. For the first time in 8 months, Maya felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Maya held Jin's business card for 3 days, turning it over in her hands while Derek's destroyed truck dominated local news coverage. She almost convinced herself she could handle the situation alone, that Derek would finally leave her alone now that his intimidation had backfired so dramatically. That illusion shattered Tuesday afternoon when 2 men approached Marcus outside the dialysis center. Marcus called her from the hospital bathroom, his 15-year-old voice shaking with fear. Maya, there were these guys waiting by the entrance when I came out. They knew my name, knew about my treatments. They said Derek sent them with a message for you. They said the explosion was just a warning and Derek has friends who can reach us anywhere. Maya's heart stopped. She'd been so focused on her own safety that she'd underestimated Derek's vindictiveness. He was using her brother as leverage, proving that running and hiding would never be enough to protect the person she loved most. She dialed Jin's number before she lost her courage. Jean answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call. They threatened Marcus, Maya said without preamble. Derek's people found him at the hospital. I need your help. 30 minutes, Jean said. I'll send a car. The black sedan that arrived was bulletproof, Maya realized as she settled into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The driver was professional and silent, taking her through downtown to a glass tower that rose 40 stories above the city. Jean owned the entire building. His penthouse occupied the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the harbor. Maya had never seen wealth like this. The furniture was Italian leather and dark wood, the artwork original pieces worth more than most people's houses. Everything was pristine, controlled, expensive in the way that spoke of generations of power rather than new money. Jean waited for her in his private office, dressed in another perfectly tailored suit. The room was designed for intimidation, with a massive desk, leather-bound books, and subtle lighting that made everything feel serious and permanent. He gestured to a chair facing his desk. Sit, he said, his tone gentle but commanding. Tell me exactly what happened. Maya recounted Marcus's phone call, watching Jin's expression grow increasingly cold as she described the threats. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. Your brother is already safe, Jean said. I had security follow up after your call. The men who approached him have been identified and dealt with. Marcus is under protection at the hospital, and he'll remain so until we resolve this situation permanently. Maya sagged with relief. How can I ever thank you? We'll discuss that now, Jean replied, opening a leather portfolio on his desk. I'm going to make you an offer, Maya. Complete protection for you and your brother, plus resources that will change your life entirely. In exchange, I need specific services and absolute loyalty. Maya straightened in her chair. What kind of services? Jin's voice became businesslike, formal. You'll live on my estate. Your brother will receive the best medical care available, including immediate placement on the priority transplant list through my connections. Your nursing school tuition will be paid in full. You'll receive an annual salary of $150,000. Maya's breath caught. That was more money than she'd ever imagined having. Jean continued. In exchange, you'll provide medical care for my associates when needed. Gunshot wounds, injuries that can't be treated in hospitals, medical emergencies that require discretion. You'll ask no questions about how injuries occurred. You'll maintain absolute silence about everything you see and hear. You'll be available at all times and live according to my security requirements. Maya's mind raced. He was asking her to become a criminal's personal physician, to treat people who'd been hurt in whatever violent business Jean conducted. It meant crossing lines she'd never imagined crossing. "What if I want to leave?" she asked quietly. "After 1 year, you can choose to renew or terminate the arrangement," Jean said. "If you choose to leave, you'll receive a severance package sufficient to relocate anywhere you want. Marcus's medical care will continue to be covered for 5 additional years. And if I betray your trust?" Jin's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "If you betray me, Maya, the protection stops immediately. The money stops. The medical care stops. You'll be on your own against Derek and anyone else who wants to hurt you. And I'll make sure you understand the consequences of breaking faith with me." The threat was delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. Jean was offering her everything she needed to save her brother and build a new life, but the price was stepping into his dark world completely. Maya stared at the contract on his desk, her thoughts churning. Taking money from a criminal. Living under the protection of a man who solved problems with violence. Treating people who'd been shot or stabbed or worse. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that she was selling her soul for security. But Marcus needed a kidney transplant that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Derek wasn't going to stop hunting them, and the police couldn't protect them from his criminal connections. She was drowning in debt and exhaustion, working herself to death for pennies while Derek circled like a predator. Maybe morality was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. Jean watched her internal struggle with patient understanding. "I'm not asking you to become something you're not, Maya. I'm asking you to use your skills to help people, even if those people exist outside the law. You'll save lives. You'll protect your brother. You'll have the resources to become the nurse you dreamed of being." Maya looked up at him, seeing something almost vulnerable in his controlled expression. "Why me? You could hire any doctor, any medical professional." "Because you have integrity," Jean said simply. "You returned a wallet with $10,000 in cash when you could have kept it. You worked double shifts to pay for your brother's care when you could have taken easier paths. You faced Derek's threats with courage even when you're terrified. I need someone I can trust completely." Maya hadn't mentioned the wallet. She'd found it in the diner's parking lot 2 weeks ago and spent an hour tracking down the owner through credit cards inside. The fact that Jean knew about it meant he'd been watching her, evaluating her character before making his offer. "You've been testing me," she realized. "I've been protecting you," Jean corrected. "Since the night Derek threatened you. My people have been watching to make sure you stayed safe." The wallet was an opportunity to confirm what I already suspected about your character. Maya picked up the pen he'd placed beside the contract. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed her name, committing herself to a world she didn't fully understand, but knowing it was the only way to save her brother and herself. "Welcome to my family, Maya," Jean said, his rare smile transforming his sharp features. "You'll never have to be afraid again." Within 2 hours, Jin's security team had moved Marcus to a private medical facility with world-class kidney specialists. Maya's belongings were packed and transported to Jin's estate, a sprawling compound hidden behind high walls and sophisticated security systems. The main house was a mansion that made his penthouse look modest, with separate wings for family, staff, and security operations. Maya's quarters were a luxurious suite with its own sitting room, bedroom, and medical office equipped with everything she might need for emergency treatments. She had her own entrance, her own car, her own staff to handle meals and housekeeping. It was more comfort than she'd ever experienced. Her first test came that same evening when one of Jin's security guards arrived with a bullet wound in his shoulder. The injury was clean. The bullet had passed through without hitting bone or major blood vessels, but it needed professional care. Maya worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning and suturing the wound while the guard remained stoically silent. She administered antibiotics and pain medication, gave detailed aftercare instructions, and asked no questions about how he'd been shot. "Well done," Jean said when she'd finished. "Professional, competent, discreet. Exactly what I hoped for." As Maya settled into her new room that night, she looked out at the harbor lights visible through her window. Marcus was safe in the medical facility, already scheduled for comprehensive testing that would fast-track his transplant evaluation. She had security, resources, and the promise of a future without fear. The price was her previous life and her moral certainty, But watching Marcus sleep peacefully for the first time in months, Maya knew she'd made the right choice. 3 months later, Maya woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the soft chime of her phone announcing Marcus's latest test results. His kidney function had improved dramatically under the specialist care Jean had provided. For the first time since her brother's diagnosis, the numbers were moving in the right direction. The estate had become home in ways Maya hadn't expected. Her medical office was fully equipped and frequently used, as Jin's associates seemed to attract injuries with remarkable regularity. She'd treated everything from knife wounds to broken bones. Always professional, always discreet, never asking how the damage occurred. In return, she'd earned respect throughout the organization as someone competent and trustworthy. Maya was reviewing her nursing school assignments when Jean appeared in her doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee. Over the past months, these small domestic gestures had become routine. He'd bring her coffee during late-night study sessions, ask about her classes, discuss her brother's progress with genuine interest. It was a side of him that seemed at odds with his reputation as a ruthless crime boss. "How did your pharmacology exam go?" Jean asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. His expensive suit was perfectly pressed despite the late hour, but he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, making him look more human and less intimidating. "Perfect score," Maya replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The professor said I have a natural understanding of drug interactions and dosing calculations. I think all the emergency medical work I've been doing here has given me practical experience most nursing students never get." Jin's rare smile appeared, transforming his sharp features. "You're wasted on simple nursing school curriculum, Maya. You have surgical instincts. Dr. Park mentioned that your suturing technique is better than most residents he's worked with." Maya felt a flush of pride at the compliment. Jin's personal physician had been impressed with her work during a particularly difficult case involving multiple gunshot wounds. She'd remained calm under pressure, anticipated what was needed before being asked, and probably saved the patient's life through quick thinking. Speaking of medical emergencies, Maya continued, pulling up Marcus's latest lab results on her laptop. "Look at these numbers. His creatinine levels have dropped significantly, and his doctors think he might be a candidate for a living donor transplant instead of waiting for a deceased donor organ." Jean leaned forward to study the screen, his presence bringing the familiar scent of expensive cologne mixed with something warmer and more personal. "That's excellent news. Dr. Kim believes we can have Marcus evaluated for surgery within the next few months." Maya saved the file and turned to face Jean fully. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. The medical care, the security, giving me a chance to continue my education. 3 months ago, I thought Marcus might die because I couldn't afford his treatments." "You don't owe me gratitude, Maya," Jean said quietly. "You've earned everything you've received through your skill and dedication. My organization is safer because of your medical expertise." As if summoned by their conversation, Jin's phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, his expression hardening. "There's been a situation at the warehouse. Gunshot wounds, multiple casualties. Dr. Park is out of the country at a conference." Maya was already moving, gathering her medical supplies with practiced efficiency. "How many injured?" "3 confirmed, possibly more," Jean replied, his voice shifting to the cold authority she'd learned to recognize during crisis situations. "This isn't a simple treatment, Maya. It's a mass casualty event from a territorial dispute. Are you prepared for that level of trauma?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "I'm ready." The warehouse was controlled chaos when they arrived. Jin's security team had established a perimeter while the wounded were brought to a cleared area Maya had designated as a triage zone. The injuries were severe. 2 men with gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen, another with multiple bullet wounds in his legs and arm. Maya worked with calm precision, prioritizing patients based on the severity of their injuries and likelihood of survival. She directed Jin's men to assist with moving patients, applying pressure to wounds, and organizing supplies. For 4 hours, she operated like a battlefield surgeon, stopping bleeding, removing bullets when necessary, and stabilizing patients for transport to friendly medical facilities. When the last patient had been evacuated, Maya sat on a shipping crate, her scrubs stained with blood and her hands still shaking slightly from adrenaline. She'd saved 3 lives tonight, working under conditions that would have challenged experienced emergency room doctors. Gene approached slowly, his dark eyes filled with something she hadn't seen before. Admiration, respect, and something deeper that made her pulse quicken. "You were magnificent, Maya. I've never seen anyone work under pressure like that. You commanded my men like a general, made life and death decisions without hesitation." Maya looked down at her bloodstained hands. "I kept thinking about Marcus, about how desperately I wanted someone with skills to save him when he needed help. These men have families too, people who need them to come home." Gene sat beside her on the crate, his expensive suit incongruous in the industrial setting. "That's why you're different from anyone else in my world. You see people, not just problems to be solved." Maya studied his profile in the dim warehouse lighting. Over the past 3 months, she'd begun to understand that Jin Hyunwoo was more complex than his reputation suggested. He was ruthless in business, yes, but also protective of those under his care. He valued loyalty and competence above everything else. And despite his power and wealth, there was something almost lonely about him. "Gene, why did you really choose to help me that night in the parking lot? I know it wasn't just because you happened to witness Derek threatening me." Gene was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Maya noticed they were clean, manicured, but bore small scars that suggested he hadn't always commanded from behind a desk. "I had a sister," Gene said finally, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Yuna. She was 5 years younger than me, sweet and trusting in a way that seemed impossible given the world we lived in. When I was building my organization, establishing territory and gaining respect, she fell in love with a man named David Park." Maya waited, sensing this was a story Gene rarely told. David was charming, successful, everything a family would want for their daughter. But he was also controlling, possessive, violent when he didn't get his way. Yuna tried to hide the bruises, made excuses for his behavior, convinced herself it was love. Jin's hands clenched into fists. "I was too focused on business to notice what was happening. Too busy building an empire to pay attention to the fact that my sister was being destroyed by someone who claimed to love her. The warning signs were all there, but I dismissed them because David was useful to my operations." Maya's heart clenched as she understood where this story was leading. "Yuna called me one night, crying, saying David had hurt her badly and she was scared. I told her we'd talk about it the next day, that I was busy with an important meeting. That was the last time I spoke to her alive." The pain in Jin's voice was raw, unfiltered. Maya reached out instinctively and covered his clenched fist with her hand. "David killed her that night, made it look like an accident. By the time I realized what had happened, by the time I understood the pattern of abuse I'd ignored, she was gone. I built this empire to have power, but when the person I loved most needed protection, I failed completely." Maya squeezed his hand gently. "That's why you couldn't walk away when you saw Derek threatening me. I see Yuna in every woman who flinches when a man raises his voice," Gene said, looking directly into Maya's eyes. "I see my failure in every bruise that gets hidden with makeup, every excuse made for inexcusable behavior. I couldn't save my sister, but I can save others." Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition that went deeper than gratitude or attraction. This dangerous, powerful man carried the same guilt and protective instinct that drove her own dedication to healing people. They were both trying to save others to make up for the ones they couldn't help. "You did save me, Gene. You saved Marcus. You've given us both a future we never could have had without your protection." Gene turned his hand palm up, threading his fingers through hers. "You've saved me too, Maya. You've given me purpose beyond just accumulating power. When I watch you work, when I see your dedication to healing people, it reminds me that there's more to life than control and territory." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, both processing the emotional weight of Jin's revelation. Maya understood now why Jin's protection felt absolute, why his organization ran with such precision, why he demanded complete loyalty from everyone around him. He was still trying to save his sister through every person he protected. The ride back to the estate was quiet, both of them lost in thought. As they walked through the main entrance, Maya realized her perspective on Gene had fundamentally changed. He wasn't just a powerful criminal who'd offered her protection in exchange for medical services. He was a man haunted by loss, driven by the need to prevent others from experiencing the pain that had shaped his entire life. "Jean," Maya said as they reached the corridor leading to her quarters. "Thank you for trusting me with Yuna's story. I understand now why this matters so much to you." Jean stopped walking and turned to face her. "You matter, Maya. Not just as my physician or as someone under my protection. You matter to me personally in ways I hadn't expected." Maya's breath caught as she recognized the shift in their relationship. Over the past 3 months, trust had grown into respect, respect had become affection, and now affection was deepening into something that felt dangerously close to love. "You matter to me too," Maya whispered, acknowledging the truth she'd been trying to ignore. "You're not the monster Derek tried to convince me you were. You're the man who's given my brother a chance at life, who's given me a chance at a future." Jean stepped closer, close enough that Maya could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. She didn't step back. For the first time since Derek's abuse had made her afraid of men's touch, she found herself wanting to bridge the distance between them. When Jean reached up to gently trace the line of her cheek with his fingers, Maya didn't flinch. When he leaned down to rest his forehead against hers, she felt her walls crumbling completely. "Sleep well, Maya," Jean murmured, his voice rough with controlled emotion. "Tomorrow I want to show you something that will help you understand who I'm working to become." Maya watched him walk away toward his own wing of the house, her heart racing with the recognition that she was falling in love with Jean Hyunwoo, and that terrified her almost as much as it filled her with hope. Maya first noticed the surveillance on a Tuesday morning when the same white van appeared outside the estate gates for the 3rd consecutive day. Jin's security team had spotted it immediately, but Maya didn't learn about the potential threat until Jean called her into his office with an expression she'd learned to recognize as dangerous calm. "We have a problem," Jean said, spreading surveillance photos across his desk. "Derek Matthews has been seen in the area multiple times over the past week. He's not alone, and he's not operating independently anymore." Maya studied the photographs, showing Derek meeting with several Asian men she didn't recognize. Her blood ran cold as she realized Derek had found new allies, people who might have the resources to challenge Jin's protection. "He's connected with the Iron Wolves, a rival Korean organization that's been trying to expand into my territory for months," Jean explained, his voice clipped with controlled anger. "They're using Derek as local intelligence, someone who knows your routines and vulnerabilities." Maya sank into the chair across from Jin's desk. "I thought we were safe here. I thought Derek had given up after his truck was destroyed." "Derek is desperate and vindictive, Maya. Men like that don't give up, they escalate." Jean leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "I'm increasing your security detail and restricting your movements until we can eliminate this threat permanently." Maya's independent streak rebelled against the idea of being confined. "Jean, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't live like a prisoner. Maybe it's time to handle this legally. Get restraining orders. Involve the police properly." Jin's expression hardened. "The police can't protect you from what Derek is planning now. He's moved beyond simple domestic violence into organized criminal conspiracy. These men don't respect court orders or police authority." "I have rights," Maya insisted, her voice rising. "I can't let fear control every aspect of my life. Marcus is doing better. I'm succeeding in school. We have a chance at a normal future. I won't hide forever." Jean studied her for a long moment, his jaw tight with frustration. "Very well. But you'll maintain the security detail, and you'll follow protocol if anything seems unusual." Maya agreed, believing she could handle Derek through legal channels now that she had Jin's resources backing her. It was a decision she would regret within hours. The first sign of escalation came when Derek's associates attempted to approach Marcus at the medical facility during his dialysis appointment. Jin's security team intercepted them before they could get close, but the message was clear. Derek knew exactly where Marcus was most vulnerable. Maya's phone rang at midnight with news that made her blood turn to ice. Dr. Kim's voice was strained as he explained that 2 men had tried to access Marcus's room, claiming to be family members. Security footage showed Derek directing them from the parking garage. They didn't reach him, Dr. Kim assured Maya, but they demonstrated knowledge of his treatment schedule and room location. "We're moving Marcus to a more secure wing immediately." Maya paced her suite, adrenaline and terror making sleep impossible. Derek wasn't just threatening her anymore. He was targeting a sick 15-year-old boy who'd never done anything except have the misfortune of being her brother. The second escalation occurred the next evening while Jean was in Seoul for a business meeting that couldn't be postponed. Maya was reviewing nursing assignments when the estate's alarm system activated with a piercing wail that sent ice through her veins. Her security detail, led by a competent woman named Agent Park, immediately implemented lockdown protocol. "Maya, into the safe room now," Agent Park commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We have multiple breaches along the perimeter." Maya's training kicked in as she grabbed her emergency medical kit and followed Agent Park to the reinforced room hidden behind Jin's study. The space was equipped with communication systems, emergency supplies, and independent air circulation designed to keep occupants safe during exactly this kind of assault. Through the security monitors, Maya watched Derek's coordinated attack unfold with military precision. 6 men in dark clothing had breached the outer fence simultaneously, using electronic devices to disable security cameras and motion sensors. This wasn't a desperate ex-boyfriend's revenge attempt. This was a professional operation. Agent Park spoke rapidly into her radio, coordinating the estate's defense while monitoring the intruder's progress. "They're moving toward the main house in formation. Someone trained them for this assault." Maya's hands shook as she watched Derek appear on one of the monitors, directing his team with confident gestures. He'd found the estate's vulnerabilities, mapped its security systems, and planned this invasion with expert assistance. Agent Park handed Maya a secure phone. "Call Jean now. Tell him we need immediate backup." Maya's voice trembled as Jean answered on the first ring. "They're inside the house, Jean. Derek brought a team. They disabled the outer security, and they know the layout." Jin's voice turned deadly cold. "How many?" "6 that we can see, plus Derek. They're moving systematically toward the residential wing. Stay exactly where you are, Maya. Do not leave that room under any circumstances. I'm mobilizing everyone and returning immediately." The line went dead, leaving Maya to watch helplessly as Derek's team searched room by room through her home. On the monitors, she could see them carrying zip ties, chloroform, and other restraint materials. This wasn't intended to be a murder. This was a kidnapping operation. Agent Park received updates through her earpiece, her expression growing grimmer. "They've reached your corridor. They know which room is yours. Someone provided detailed intelligence about your living arrangements." Maya realized with horrible clarity that Derek had spent weeks studying the estate, learning her routines, mapping her vulnerabilities. The Iron Wolves had given him resources and training to execute a professional abduction. The safe room's communication system crackled with Jin's voice, transmitted from his car racing back from Seoul. "Maya, can you hear me?" "I'm here," Maya whispered, afraid to speak too loudly even in the reinforced room. "I need you to understand something," Jean said, his voice carrying lethal intensity. "Derek isn't planning to hurt you immediately. He wants to use you and Marcus as leverage against me, to force territorial concessions. That means you're valuable to him alive and unharmed." Maya's relief was short-lived as Jean continued. "But once he realizes he can't break my organization through threats alone, he'll escalate to permanent solutions. He's planning to kill you both to send a message." The monitors showed Derek standing in Maya's bedroom, examining her personal belongings with possessive familiarity. He picked up a photograph of Maya and Marcus, studying it with an expression that made Maya's skin crawl. Agent Park checked her weapon and adjusted her position by the door. "Jin's reinforcements are 15 minutes out. We need to maintain position until they arrive." Maya watched Derek's team continue their methodical search, growing increasingly frustrated as they failed to locate her. On the audio feed, she could hear Derek giving orders with cold efficiency. "She's here somewhere. The Korean doesn't leave his assets unprotected. Check the study, check behind the bookcases. Look for hidden rooms." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized Derek understood Jin's protective nature well enough to predict hidden security measures. The Iron Wolves had coached him extensively about Jin's operational methods. Agent Park's radio crackled with an urgent update. They found the safe room entrance. They're trying to breach the lock mechanisms. The reinforced door was designed to withstand assault for up to 30 minutes. But Maya could hear drilling and electronic interference as Derek's team worked to override the security systems. Someone had provided them with sophisticated breaching equipment. Maya, Jin's voice came through the communication system again. Closer now, but still minutes away. I want you to know that no matter what happens, Derek Matthews will not survive this night. He's made the mistake of threatening what's mine. The possessive intensity in Jin's voice should have frightened Maya, but instead it filled her with fierce satisfaction. Derek had underestimated what he was challenging when he decided to target Jin's household. The drilling sound stopped suddenly, followed by Derek's voice speaking directly to the safe room through the door's intercom system. Maya, sweetheart, I know you can hear me. This doesn't have to be difficult. Come out now and nobody else gets hurt. Maya found her voice, surprising herself with its steadiness. Go to hell, Derek. Derek's laughter was cold and familiar. Still playing hard to get, I see. That's fine. We have all night, and I brought tools that can open any door. But while we wait, maybe I'll pay Marcus a visit at the hospital. My friends are very good at getting past medical security. The threat against her brother shattered Maya's remaining composure. She lunged toward the intercom, but Agent Park caught her arm. He's lying, Agent Park said firmly. Jean has Marcus under maximum security. Derek can't reach him. But Maya's terror had overwhelmed rational thought. Derek knew exactly which pressure points would break her resolve. He'd studied her vulnerabilities the same way he'd mapped the estate's security weaknesses. The safe room door shuttered as Derek's team attached more powerful breaching equipment. Agent Park checked her weapon again and positioned herself for defensive action. Through the communication system, Jin's voice cut through Maya's panic with absolute authority. Maya, listen to me carefully. Derek's team at the hospital has been neutralized. Marcus is completely safe. In approximately 3 minutes, Derek Matthews will discover what happens when someone threatens my family. The estate's lights went out suddenly, plunging everything into darkness except for the safe room's emergency systems. On the monitors, Maya could see infrared images of Jin's security forces moving through the grounds like ghosts, surrounding Derek's team with military precision. Maya pressed against the monitor, watching Jin himself appear in the mansion's main corridor. Even in the grainy infrared footage, his controlled fury was visible in every movement. Derek's confident drilling stopped as his team realized they were no longer the hunters in this situation. Through the audio feed, Maya heard increasing panic as Derek's men reported contact with Jin's forces. The assault on the safe room ended abruptly as Derek's team was forced to abandon their breach attempt and defend themselves. Maya watched the monitors in fascination and terror as Jin's organization demonstrated why they controlled territory throughout the region. Agent Park received the all-clear signal 20 minutes later. Maya emerged from the safe room to find Jin waiting in the corridor, his expensive suit slightly disheveled, but his dark eyes burning with protective fury. Jin crossed the space between them in 2 quick strides and pulled Maya against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with possessive intensity. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands running over her arms and shoulders to check for injuries. I'm fine, Maya whispered, breathing in his familiar scent and feeling safe for the first time since the alarms had started. But Jin, Derek knew everything about the estate. Someone helped him plan this. Jin's expression turned deadly as he confirmed what Maya had suspected. Derek was coached by the Iron Wolves. They provided intelligence, equipment, and tactical support. This was a declaration of war disguised as a personal vendetta. Maya looked around at the damage to her home, the violated security that had seemed absolute just hours ago. Where is Derek now? Jin's smile was sharp and cold. Derek Matthews is learning that some mistakes are permanent. He'll never threaten you or anyone else again. Maya understood that Derek's story had ended tonight, along with her illusion that legal protection could match the reality of criminal threats. As Jin led her to his private wing for the rest of the night, Maya realized she no longer wanted to fight the dangerous world that had become her sanctuary. She was ready to embrace it completely. Maya woke to silence, so complete it felt unnatural after months of living with constant security measures. The estate's usual background hum of electronic surveillance and patrol activity had vanished, replaced by a stillness that spoke of resolved conflict. Jin sat in the chair beside her bed, still wearing his suit from the previous night, but now rumpled and bearing faint traces of what she didn't want to examine too closely. His dark eyes were calm, satisfied in a way that sent a chill through Maya's understanding of what the night had brought. It's finished, Jean said simply when he saw her stirring. Derek Matthews and his associates no longer exist as a threat to you or anyone else. The Iron Wolves have been persuaded to redirect their territorial ambitions elsewhere. Maya sat up slowly, studying Jin's face for signs of the violence she knew he'd orchestrated. His hands were clean, his expression peaceful, but there was something final in his posture that told her Derek's chapter in her life had closed permanently. The local news would report it as a gas explosion at an abandoned warehouse. Jean continued, his voice matter of fact. Derek and 6 associates were meeting to plan criminal activities when a propane leak caused a catastrophic fire. No survivors, no witnesses, no investigation necessary. Maya absorbed this information with surprising calm. 3 months ago, the knowledge that Jean had killed Derek would have horrified her. Now, after experiencing the terror of Derek's professional assault on her home, she felt only relief that the threat was gone forever. "How do you feel about what I've done?" Jean asked, watching her reaction carefully. "I need to know if you can accept the methods I use to protect what's mine." Maya met his gaze steadily. Derek would never have stopped, Jean. He would have kept escalating until he destroyed Marcus and me both. What you did wasn't murder, it was surgery. You removed a cancer that was killing us slowly. Jin's expression softened with something close to wonder. "You're not afraid of me now that you know what I'm capable of." "I'm not afraid of you," Maya said, realizing the truth as she spoke it. "I'm afraid of a world without your protection. Last night proved that legal systems and normal security can't handle the kind of evil Derek represented. You're not a monster, Jean. You're the only thing standing between good people and the predators who would destroy them." Jean stood and moved to the window overlooking the harbor, his shoulders carrying the weight of decisions Maya was only beginning to understand. "I've killed 17 men in my lifetime, Maya. Some in self-defense, some to protect territory, some to eliminate threats like Derek. Each death was calculated, necessary, but they changed something inside me." Maya rose from the bed and approached him, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. Jean Hyunwoo, the man who commanded fear and respect throughout the region, was showing her the cost of the power he wielded. "I built this empire to ensure no one could hurt what I value," Jean continued, his voice rough with emotion. "But power without purpose becomes corruption. Territory without meaning becomes emptiness. Until I found you, I was becoming the very thing I'd sworn to fight against." Maya stopped beside him at the window, close enough to feel the controlled tension radiating from his frame. "You're not corrupt, Jean. You're complicated. You use darkness to protect light, violence to create safety. That doesn't make you evil, it makes you necessary." Jean turned to face her, his dark eyes intense with something she'd never seen before. Desperate hope, vulnerable need, the recognition that she held power over him that no amount of wealth or territory could match. "Maya," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I need you to understand something. What started as protection has become something deeper. You're not just someone I'm keeping safe anymore. You're the reason I want to be worthy of the power I hold." Maya's breath caught as she realized Jean was offering her his heart along with his protection. The dangerous crime boss who commanded absolute loyalty from hundreds of men was standing before her, as vulnerable as any man who'd ever fallen in love. "I love you," Jean continued, the words seeming to surprise him with their intensity. "Not just your strength or your skill or your integrity, though I admire all of those. I love the way you make me feel human instead of just powerful. I love that you see the man I'm trying to become instead of just the criminal I've been." Maya felt her walls crumbling completely as she recognized the truth she'd been fighting for weeks. Jean Hyunwoo had saved her life, protected her family, and given her a future she'd never imagined possible. But more than that, he'd shown her a love that was absolute, protective, and transformative. "I love you too," Maya whispered, stepping closer until she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I love your strength, your loyalty, your willingness to do terrible things to protect innocent people. I love that you trust me with your vulnerabilities and respect my capabilities." Jean reached up to cup her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the power those same hands had wielded just hours ago. "You're mine, Maya. Completely, permanently, irrevocably mine. I will never let anything or anyone threaten what we have." The possessive declaration should have frightened her, But Maya felt only fierce satisfaction at being claimed by Jean Hyunwoo. "And you're mine," she replied, her voice strong with certainty. "Your past, your empire, your future, all of it belongs to me now. Forever." Jean breathed against her lips before kissing her with desperate intensity, as if he could seal their commitment through physical contact. When they separated, Jin's expression had shifted from vulnerable to determined. "Maya, I want you to be my wife. Not just my lover or my protected asset, but my legal partner and the official head of my family organization." Maya's heart raced at the magnitude of what he was offering. Marriage to Jean meant becoming the matriarch of a criminal empire, accepting responsibility for decisions that would affect hundreds of people, embracing a role that would change her life completely. "I want a legitimate ceremony," Jean continued, his voice gaining confidence as he outlined his vision. "Legal marriage with full documentation, recognition by both Korean and American authorities. I want you to have access to everything I own, legal protection that extends beyond just my personal guarantee." Maya studied his face, seeing the man who'd built an empire from nothing offering her half of everything he'd achieved. "What about my nursing career, my dreams of helping people through medicine?" Jin's rare smile transformed his sharp features. "Maya, I'm going to build you the most advanced private medical facility on the West Coast. You'll treat my associates, yes, but you'll also provide care for anyone who needs it regardless of their ability to pay. You'll have the resources to save lives on a scale most nurses never imagine." Maya felt tears pricking her eyes as she realized Jean had found a way to honor both her dreams and his needs. A private medical practice with unlimited funding, treating both criminals and civilians, building something positive from the wealth generated by his darker enterprises. "Yes," Maya said, her voice clear and strong. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be the head of your family. Yes, I'll build something beautiful with the resources you've given me." Jean pulled her against him with possessive intensity, his arms wrapping around her like he could absorb her into his very being. "You'll never be afraid again, Maya. You'll never lack for anything. Never have to compromise your dreams for survival. Never have to choose between protecting the people you love and maintaining your integrity." The wedding took place 2 weeks later in the estate's main garden, surrounded by Jin's most trusted associates and the small family Maya had left. Marcus, healthy and thriving thanks to his successful kidney transplant from a donor Jin's connections had located, walked Maya down the makeshift aisle with pride shining in his young eyes. Dr. Park performed the ceremony, having become ordained specifically for the occasion. Maya wore a simple white dress that cost more than her previous year's salary, while Jean stood waiting in his perfectly tailored suit, his dark eyes never leaving her face. When Dr. Park asked if she would take Jean as her husband, Maya's voice carried across the garden with absolute certainty. "I will." When Jean was asked the same question, his response was equally firm. "Forever and always." The reception was intimate, elegant, and peaceful in a way Maya hadn't experienced since childhood. Jin's associates treated her with genuine respect, recognizing her not just as their boss's wife, but as someone who'd earned her place through competence and courage. Marcus charmed everyone with his teenager enthusiasm for his new luxurious lifestyle and his gratitude for the medical care that had saved his life. As the evening wound down and guests departed, Maya found herself standing on the terrace overlooking the harbor, wearing Jin's jacket over her wedding dress and feeling more content than she'd ever imagined possible. Jean appeared beside her, loosening his tie and rolling up his sleeves in the gesture she'd come to love. "Happy Mrs. Hyunwoo." Maya smiled at her new name, testing how it felt to be legally and permanently connected to the most powerful man in the region. "Completely happy," she replied. "Marcus is healthy. I have unlimited resources to help people through medicine, and I'm married to a man who would burn the world down to protect me." Jin's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her against his side. "You realize there's no going back now, Maya. You're part of this world completely, with all the responsibilities and dangers that entails." Maya leaned into his warmth, feeling safe in a way she'd never experienced before Derek's abuse had taught her to fear men's touch. "I don't want to go back, Jean. I want to build something new with you, something that uses your power to create rather than just control." 6 months later, Maya cut the ribbon on the Hyunwoo Medical Center, a state-of-the-art facility that provided free emergency care to anyone who walked through its doors. The center's funding came from Jin's legitimate businesses, which had expanded dramatically under Maya's influence toward legal enterprises that served the community. Maya worked as the chief medical officer, treating everything from gunshot wounds to childhood injuries, surrounded by the best equipment money could buy and the most talented medical professionals Jin could recruit. Her nursing degree had become the foundation for something much larger, a medical practice that saved lives without asking questions about how patients had been injured. Jin expanded his territory not through violence, but through strategic partnerships with other organizations who recognized the value of peace over war. His reputation as a man who protected rather than exploited had drawn loyalty from unexpected sources, building an empire based on mutual benefit rather than fear. Standing in her medical office late one evening, Maya looked out at the city lights and remembered the terrified waitress who'd flinched when Derek walked into Murphy's diner. That woman felt like a different person entirely, someone weak and trapped and convinced she had no options. Maya Chun had died that night in the parking lot. Maya Hyunwoo had been born in her place, a woman with power, resources, and the absolute devotion of a man who'd proven his love through actions rather than words. When Jin appeared in her doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee, Maya smiled at the domestic ritual that had become precious to her. "How was your day, Dr. Hyunwoo?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk exactly as he had during those first months when she'd been learning to trust his protection. 3 lives saved, Maya replied, accepting her coffee gratefully. A successful surgery on a teenager with a stab wound, a cardiac emergency that we stabilized before transport, and a woman who brought her children in after escaping domestic violence. Jin's expression darkened at the mention of domestic abuse. What does she need? Maya smiled at her husband's predictable response to threats against women and children. Safe housing, legal representation, medical care for stress-related injuries, and probably psychological counseling for her children. Oh, and her ex-husband needs to understand that continuing to stalk her would be very unwise. Consider it handled, Jin said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once terrified Maya and now filled her with satisfaction. Maya reached across her desk to take Jin's hand, intertwining their fingers in the gesture that had become their private signal of connection. "I love this life we've built together, Jin. I love being powerful enough to help people who have nowhere else to turn." Jin brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her wedding ring. "You've made me better than I ever thought I could be, Maya. You've turned an empire built on darkness into something that creates light." Outside her office window, the city spread beneath them like a kingdom they'd claimed together. Maya Hyunwoo, former waitress, current physician, wife to one of the most dangerous men on the West Coast, had found her place in a world where healing and power existed in perfect balance. She was no longer running from threats or hiding from dangerous men. She was standing beside the most dangerous man of all, using his strength to build something beautiful from the ashes of everything they'd both survived.